The stagecoach slammed to a stop so violently that Alara Dawson's forehead struck the wooden frame, opening a thin line of blood across her brow. The cold wind of Wyoming roared through the open door, filling the coach with snow and silence. 23 days she'd been traveling. 23 days believing she was riding toward a second chance, a home, a family. Instead, she stepped out into a winter that felt like it wanted to take her apart. Across the frozen road, a man stood waiting. Caleb Hartwell. Broader than his photograph, harder than the letters he'd written, his expression carved from the same stone as the mountains behind him. He had already torn their marriage contract in half. "Get out," he'd said. "A barren woman is no wife to me." But before Alara could reach the door, a small voice whispered, "Pa, she looks like Mama." And everything changed. The world still rang in Alara's ears from the jolt of the stagecoach as she stepped onto the snow-packed ground of Ashfall Crossing, a lonely Wyoming stop that looked more like a forgotten scar on the map than a real town. Her gloved hand pressed to her forehead. When she pulled it away, the tips glimmered red. Perfect, bleeding on the first moment of her new life. The wind sliced through her Boston wool coat like knives. Snow fell in heavy sheets, drifting against the small wooden station house behind her. The platform was empty except for one figure. Caleb Hartwell. He stood 10 feet away, hat crushed between his hands, shoulders wide enough to block the gray sky behind him. His photograph had shown a rugged rancher with steady eyes. But the man in front of her was sharper, colder, weather-struck, like grief had carved him down to the bone. "Alara," he asked without warmth. "Mr. Hartwell," she said softly. Her voice trembled, but not from the cold. "I'm Alara Dawson." His eyes swept over her like she was a ledger he needed to balance. Too thin, too pale, blood on her face, hands untouched by real work. A woman shaped by city life, not wilderness. "You're bleeding." The coach jolted. I'm fine." He didn't answer, didn't offer a handkerchief, didn't step closer. He simply turned, lifted her single carpet bag, and walked toward the station house. "Come inside. We need to talk." Her stomach twisted. Those words never meant anything good. Inside, the little building was barely warmer than outside. A pot-belly stove coughed out weak heat, just enough to keep the frost from claiming the walls. Caleb set her bag down, his back to her. "I received your letter," he said. "The one from Cheyenne." Alara stopped breathing. Her letter, the one she wrote with shaking hands, tears dropping onto the ink. The one where she finally confessed what Boston's doctors had told her, that she would never carry a child to term, that she could not give a husband sons. "I should have told you sooner," she whispered. "Yes," he said. "You should have told me before I sold cattle for your fare, before my children asked when their new mother was coming." He reached into his coat, pulled out a folded sheet of paper. Their marriage contract. Alara's heart thudded. He tore it in half. The sound echoed like a bone snapping, like something breaking inside her chest. "You misled me," he said. "I didn't lie. You let me believe you could give me children." His voice hardened. A lie unspoken is still a lie. Her hands shook hard enough to make her fingers sting. She clasped them together until they hurt. "I can still be a good wife," she whispered. "I can cook, clean, teach your children, help with the ranch. I don't need a teacher. I need a wife who can give me sons." The words landed on her heart like stones dropped down a well. She had heard this before. Boston whispers behind lace fans, the pitying looks at church, the quiet, cruel question of what a woman was worth if she could not bear life. Alara lifted her chin. "Then, I'll take the next stage. Back to Cheyenne." Caleb's jaw tightened. "That won't be possible." Alara blinked. "Excuse me. Roads are closing. Next stage won't come through until spring." He met her eyes fully for the first time, and the cold in them made the wind outside seem warm. "You're stuck here, Miss Dawson. 5 months. 5 months alone in the wilderness with a man who was already looking at her like she was a mistake he couldn't undo." Her knees weakened. She braced herself on the nearest chair. "I see," she whispered. He looked away, almost uncomfortable. "I've got 3 children at the ranch. Lydia's 12, Colton's 9, and Maisie just turned 6. Their mother died 2 years ago. Scarlet fever." Alara swallowed. I'm very sorry. They need schooling. His tone softened barely. And you said in your letters you were a teacher in Boston. Yes. I taught at Miss Hawthorne's Academy for young ladies. Then you can teach mine. Caleb crossed his arms. Separate room. Separate arrangements. You work through winter. Come spring, I'll pay your passage anywhere you want to go. Not a proposal. Not forgiveness. Not kindness. A transaction. But what choice did she have? I accept, Elara said quietly. Caleb nodded once. We leave in an hour. Dress warm. He disappeared through the door, leaving her alone with a racing pulse and the torn halves of a future she'd foolishly believed she was allowed to want. She pressed her palms to her eyes until the darkness behind them sparked with stars. She would not cry. Not here. Not again. She had survived her husband's death 3 years ago, survived Boston society turning its back, survived doctors shaking their heads with practiced pity. She would survive Caleb Hartwell, too. The ride to the ranch was 3 hours of cold, so sharp it cut through fur and wool and skin. Caleb sat rigid beside her in the wagon, saying little, the reins steady in his gloved hands. By the second hour, Elara could no longer feel her face. Stay close, he murmured as he helped her down when they finally arrived. His hand steadied her waist, warm, strong, and then vanished the moment her boots touched snow. Children don't know you're coming. Didn't want to complicate things. Complicate, she echoed, though she already knew what he meant. In case you weren't suitable, he said simply. The word stung far worse than the wind, but she said nothing. The front door burst open before she could reply. A tall girl of 12 rushed out, braid half undone. Behind her, a thin boy with gray eyes like his father's, and a small girl clutching a threadbare doll missing one arm. Papa, they cried. Inside, Caleb said, his voice firm. We need to talk. Once gathered in the warm glow of the hearth, Caleb cleared his throat. This is Miss Dawson, he said. She'll be teaching you through winter. 3 sets of eyes pinned her at once. Elara forced a small smile. Hello. I'm pleased to meet you. The eldest girl narrowed her gaze. You're the lady from the letters. The one Pa was going to marry. The room went silent. Even a fire seemed to pause. Lydia, Caleb warned. But you're not. Lydia's chin lifted. You're not going to be our mother. Are you? That's enough, Caleb said sharply. Why not? Lydia demanded. What's wrong with her? Elara felt her stomach twist. Before she could answer, the youngest, little Maisie, stepped forward. Her big brown eyes shimmered with something too old for her small body. Are you going to leave like Mama did? The innocence of the question broke something inside Elara. She knelt to Maisie's height. I promise I won't leave until spring, she whispered. I'm here, and I'll stay. Maisie blinked softly. That's not very long. No, Elara said gently. It isn't. A cough thundered behind them, wet, rough, and painful. Colton doubled over, gripping his chest. Caleb rushed to his side. Easy, son. Breathe slow. But Elara recognized that cough. The kind that rattled in the bones. The kind that built slowly and destroyed quickly. How long has he been like this? She asked quietly. Since last winter, Caleb said stiffly. Doctor says he'll grow out of it. Elara met his eyes. She saw the truth he was trying and failing to hide. He was terrified. I can help him, she said. Steam tents. Compresses. Certain herbs. I know what to do. Caleb's voice came out sharp. You a doctor now? No, she stood her ground. But I can help. Caleb stared at her for a long moment. Something hardened in him, then cracked. I apologize, he muttered. It's been a long day. He showed her to a small room near the kitchen, bare but clean. A narrow bed, a washstand, and a single window frosted from the cold. Breakfast at dawn, Caleb said. Children first, then lessons. Mr. Hartwell, she said softly as he turned to leave. He paused. Thank you for giving me a chance. A shadow crossed his face. Something pained, something like regret. Don't thank me yet, he murmured. Winter here is hard. Makes people hard. He shut the door. Elara sank onto the bed, hands trembling. From somewhere in the house, she heard Maisie's small voice. Papa, will she stay? The answer floated back through the thin walls. Caleb's voice. Rough. Quiet. I don't know. Alara clasped her hands together. Then I'll give him reason to. Alara woke before dawn to a silence, so complete it felt like the world itself was holding its breath. Boston had always hummed with life. Carriages, footsteps, voices, church bells. But here, the quiet wrapped around her like a blanket. Heavy, still, unfamiliar. When she swung her legs from the bed, her feet touched icy floorboards that made her gasp. She dressed quickly, choosing the warmest dress she had. Dark blue wool, high-necked, sturdy. Not a bride's dress, a governess's. She stepped into the kitchen just as Caleb poured coffee into a battered tin cup. He looked like he'd slept as poorly as she had. Shadows beneath his eyes, jaw tense, hair slightly disheveled as though he'd run his hands through it all night. The moment he saw her, something flickered in his expression. Relief, maybe, or surprise that she hadn't changed her mind in the night. Children are still asleep, he said. You want breakfast? I can make it, she said quickly, if you show me where things are. He gestured to the cupboards in his quiet, efficient way. Oats in the blue tin, molasses on that shelf, firewood behind the stove. They worked in silence, awkward at first, then softer. Caleb stood by the window, cup in hand, staring at something far beyond the snowy fields. Alara focused on the stove, coaxing the flame to life, stirring the oats in slow circles. She found comfort in the familiar rhythm of cooking. Footsteps sounded in the hallway. Little Maisie appeared first, hair wild from sleep, still in her nightgown. She froze when she saw Alara. You're still here, she whispered. I told you I would be. Alara smiled gently. Maisie rubbed her eyes. I had a dream you left like Mama. Alara's heart pulled tight. She crossed the room and knelt. I'm not leaving. Promise. Promise. Maisie wrapped her arms around Alara's neck. The embrace was warm, soft, impossibly trusting. Alara held her a moment longer than necessary. Lydia appeared next, already dressed, posture rigid, eyes sharp. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. The distrust in her gaze said everything. Colton followed, dragging his blanket behind him. He coughed once, short, sharp, then pressed his hand to his chest. Does it hurt? Alara asked softly. He avoided her eyes. Only a little. May I look? Caleb at the stove stiffened. His instinct was to refuse. Alara saw it. But then Colton's face tightened with a soft wheeze, and something in Caleb's resolve cracked. Let her, he said. She examined the boy gently, fingers moving across his ribs, feeling the rattle of congestion beneath. He had been sick for months, maybe longer. Colton, she said softly, I'm going to make you something today. A steam tent. It may help you breathe easier. He swallowed. Do they work? They helped my younger sister when she was your age. That part was true. She got better? He asked, voice small. She grew up strong, Alara said. The other parts, the years of medical wards, the children who hadn't made it, she kept to herself. Colton nodded slowly. All right. The morning unfolded like a delicate dance. Lydia kept her distance, answering questions with clipped words and narrowed eyes. She wasn't cruel, just wounded, protective, suspicious of anyone touching the fragile pieces of her family. Colton did his lessons quietly, obedient but tired. Every few minutes, a cough rumbled deep in his chest. And Maisie, darling, bright-eyed Maisie, wanted nothing but Alara's attention. She brought slates and broken dolls, spilled ink and questions. Are you afraid of horses? Do you know how to sew buttons? Do people in Boston eat snow? Are you going to be our mama? Lydia snapped at that. Stop asking her that. Maisie frowned. Why? I want to know. It's not her job. It could be. It won't be. It might. It won't. Girls. Alara stepped between them. Everyone is adjusting. That takes time. Lydia crossed her arms, jaw tight. Maisie scowled at the floor. Colton looked at them with tired eyes that were far too old for 9 years. Alara's chest ached for them. 3 children. All hurting. All trying. All desperate in their different ways. She knew that pain. That hunger for safety. For someone who wouldn't leave. She swallowed her own burn of emotion. Let's begin spelling, she said. Later that afternoon, when Colton's cough worsened, Alara set up the steam tent near the fire. She boiled water, added the herbs she'd tucked into her bag months ago, and created a small chamber using blankets and a chair. Colton crawled inside obediently, breathing the warm vapor. Alara sat beside him, listening, counting the seconds between each cough, watching the rise and fall of his small chest. Lydia watched from the other side of the room, suspicion still lingering in her eyes. Maisie crawled into Alara's lap uninvited, resting her cheek against Alara's shoulder. Her tiny fingers wrapped around a lock of Alara's hair. Caleb walked in from the barn and stopped. He stared, not at Alara, not exactly, but at the scene, Colton breathing easier in the steam, Lydia watching quietly, Maisie curled into Alara's side like she'd always belonged there. His jaw worked. Something softened in his face. "You're helping him?" he asked quietly. Alara nodded. "He's congested. The warmth is loosening it. He should sleep more comfortably tonight." Caleb knelt beside Colton, brushing a rough hand over his boy's hair. "Thank you." The words were raw, barely above a whisper. "You don't need to thank me," she said gently. "He's a child. Children should breathe easily. That's all." Caleb exhaled, a long, weary breath. A crack in the armor. A small one, but real. "Sarah, she used herbs too," he said quietly. "She had a garden out back. Knew more about healing than most men in town. I haven't been able to look at that garden since she passed." Alara didn't speak. She let the silence settle. Let him choose whether to continue. "She would have known what to do," he said softly. "With Colton. With all of this." Alara reached out and touched the boy's forehead again. His breathing had eased, the rattling subsiding. "You're doing the best you can," she whispered. "That's all a parent can do." Caleb's eyes lifted. They held hers. For the first time since she'd arrived, he wasn't looking through her or past her. He was looking at her, seeing her, and something in her shifted quietly, like a branch bending under new snow. That evening, after the children were asleep, Alara sat beside the fire, mending one of Colton's shirts. The house was silent except for the crackle of wood and the faint sound of wind howling past the shutters. Caleb appeared in the doorway, drying his hands with a worn cloth. His injured pride had softened, ever so slightly, into something more complicated. "You did good with the children today," he said. Alara set the mended shirt aside. "They're good children. They're hurting," he said. "All of us are." She nodded. "Grief doesn't follow a straight path." Caleb looked into the fire. "No, it doesn't." A long moment passed, quiet but full, not empty. "What brought you here, really?" he asked finally. "The real reason, not the one from your letters." Alara hesitated. Outside, the wind rattled the windows. Inside, the silence held its breath. "I needed to start over," she said softly. "Back in Boston, everything reminded me of what I couldn't do. What I'd failed at. What I'd lost." Her voice wavered, but she kept going. "I lost my husband. Lost 3 pregnancies before they ever took a breath. Lost my place in society. Lost my own family. There was nothing left for me there." Caleb's face tightened. Not judgment, but something like sorrow. "So you came west." "Yes. And when you learned I wanted children," his voice roughened. "You hid the truth." "I was afraid," Alara whispered. "Afraid you'd reject me before I even set foot here. Afraid I didn't deserve another chance." Caleb's jaw clenched. "I shouldn't have torn the contract like that. I was angry, scared, still grieving. I understand." He looked at her then. Really looked. "Do you?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she said simply. Because she did. More than he knew. Before he could respond, a scream shattered the quiet. "Maisie!" Caleb was on his feet instantly, rushing toward the children's room. Alara followed, heart pounding. Maisie sat upright in bed, sobbing, reaching for someone who wasn't there. "Mama! Mama, don't go!" Alara reached her first. She gathered the trembling child into her arms, rocking her gently. "She's sweetheart. You're safe. I'm here." Maisie clung to her desperately. She was here. Mama was here. She said she had to go, and she didn't say goodbye. Caleb stood in the doorway, face ashen, hands shaking. Lydia and Colton hovered behind him, both wide-eyed. Maisie's sobs grew softer, her breath hitching against Alara's shoulder. "Everyone goes away," Maisie whispered. The room fell silent. Alara's throat tightened painfully. "No," she said softly. "I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." Maisie didn't release her until sleep finally pulled her under again. Alara tucked her in gently. When she stood, Caleb was still there, stricken, exhausted, undone. "Alara," he whispered. She shook her head gently. "Tomorrow," she said. "We'll talk tomorrow." He didn't argue. He just watched her with an expression she couldn't yet name. Fear. Hope. Maybe something deeper. Something dangerous. Alara returned to her room, sank onto the bed, and let out a slow breath. The house was still again, but everything had changed. Everything. Because Maisie had reached for her. Because Caleb hadn't stopped her. Because the walls between all of them were beginning to crack, just a little. Because she was no longer a stranger in this house. She was becoming something else. Something more. The next morning dawned pale and silver, the kind of cold light that made the world look half-carved from ice. Alara stepped outside to gather firewood before the children woke, her breath clouding in thick white plumes. The snow was soft beneath her boots, untouched except for the tracks left by Caleb as he'd gone to the barn earlier. She carried an armful of wood back toward the house when she heard something low, rough, barely controlled. Caleb's voice, anger simmering beneath it. She paused, her heart picking up speed. It was coming from behind the barn. Alara hurried closer, unsure why, only knowing something felt wrong. As she stepped around the corner, she froze. Caleb stood inches away from a man on horseback, broad-shouldered, wearing a black coat dusted with frost. His face was cruel in the way some men carried cruelty like a birthright. Dane Mercer. Alara remembered the name from Caleb's letters. A rancher, wealthy, ruthless, widowed, a man spent like a blade, always pointed toward what he wanted. And he had wanted Caleb's land for over a year. Caleb's jaw was tight, his hands balled at his sides. "You've got until spring to make your decision," Dane said, his tone smooth as poison honey. "Sell to me now and keep your pride. Refuse, and I'll take your pride and your land both." Caleb didn't move. "Get off my property," Dane smirked. "Heard you sent for a bride." Poor woman traveled all the way from Boston just to be thrown out. Alara's breath hitched. He knew about her, and he wasn't through talking. "Bad luck," Caleb, Dane taunted, "though I suppose it saves you the trouble of sending a barren woman back on the next wagon." Caleb lunged, but stopped himself just short of grabbing Dane by the coat. Dane only smiled wider. "You're hanging on by a thread," he said. "Snow's deep, cattle are thin, and your boy's been coughing half the winter. Don't think I don't hear things." Alara's stomach dropped. How much did he know? Dane tapped the snow from his gloves. "Sell now, Hartwell, before the winter finishes the job for you." He yanked his reins, turned his horse, and rode off with a cold laugh echoing behind him. Caleb stood there shaking, rage simmering so hot it seemed to steam off his skin. Alara stayed hidden until she was sure Dane was gone. Then she stepped forward. "You heard all of that?" Caleb asked, voice low. "Yes," she said softly. "I'm sorry." He rubbed a hand across his face. "Mercer knows I'm stretched thin. He's been circling like a wolf since Sarah died. Thinks he can scare me into selling. Will he try something dangerous?" "He doesn't need to." Caleb's voice turned bitter. "He just waits for a winter like this one." Alara set the firewood down slowly. "You're not alone in this," she said. He looked at her with tired eyes. "I don't expect you to fight my battles." "No," she said gently, "but I am here, and I won't pretend I didn't hear what he said about me." Caleb's expression tightened. He had no right, but he wasn't lying. Caleb took a step toward her, then another. "Alara," he said quietly, "I was the one who spoke in anger, the one who judged you. Dane Mercer knows nothing of you. Nothing." The words hit her with unexpected force. She swallowed, looked away. A small voice broke the moment. "Pa!" Lydia stood in the barn doorway, hair braided, boots on, jaw tight. She had that same steel in her eyes that Caleb carried. "Breakfast is ready," she said. Colton's coughing again. Caleb straightened. I'll be right in. Lydia hesitated. Her eyes flicked to Alara. You're not scared of men like Mercer? She asked quietly. Alara offered a soft smile. I've met worse. Lydia studied her a long moment, then turned and walked back toward the house. Caleb, watch her go. She's trying to protect us, he murmured. She's strong, Alara said. Like her father. Caleb blinked, startled by the compliment. But he didn't deny it. Inside, Colton's cough had worsened again. He held his chest, wheezing, face pale. Alara knelt beside him. I want you to rest today, she said. No lessons until you're breathing easier. Colton nodded weakly. Maisie climbed into Alara's lap, curling against her like a kitten seeking warmth. She played with Alara's braid thoughtfully. Alara, she asked, do you know how to make Mama's tea? Alara blinked. Mama's tea. Uh-huh. Maisie nodded hard. Mama made it when we were sick. She said it chased bad things out of our chest. Caleb stiffened across the room. The memory hit him like a blow. Maisie, he said gently. She doesn't, I might know it. Alara interrupted softly. If you tell me what it tasted like. Maisie's eyes lit up. Warm, sweet, spicy, and it made Colton stop wheezing. Alara smiled. I think I can make something similar. Maisie hugged her neck again. Caleb turned away abruptly, as though seeing Alara step into the role of caretaker twisted something deep in his chest. By midday, the tea was warm, fragrant, and ready. Alara handed the cup to Colton, who sipped gratefully. Within half an hour, his breathing eased again. It's helping, he whispered. Yes, she said softly, but you need quiet and warmth. Lydia hovered in the doorway, watching everything with an expression Alara couldn't quite read. Not anger, not distrust anymore, something more complicated. Finally, Lydia stepped inside. Alara, she said carefully, you should know something. Alara looked up. What is it? Dame Mercer. Lydia swallowed. He came here once. Last year. Caleb's shoulders tensed. He wanted to marry Pa after Mama died, Lydia whispered. He said he wanted a wife who didn't talk back, and children who knew how to behave. Alara's breath caught. Caleb's hand closed into a fist. He scared Maisie, Lydia said, and he made me feel small. Mama would have hated him. Alara stood and crossed to Lydia, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. You are not small, Alara said. You're brave and smart, and you see things clearly. Lydia's eyes shone. No tears fell. She was too proud for that, but the emotion trembled just beneath her ribs. Thank you, Lydia whispered. It was the first time she'd ever said the words. That evening, Caleb worked late in the barn, mending a broken harness. Alara brought a lantern and a tray of dinner, simple stew and cornbread. She found him hunched over a workbench, coat off, shirt sleeves rolled past his elbows. Firelight and lantern glow carved shadows across the muscles of his forearms. He looked exhausted and determined and alone. You didn't eat, Alara said softly. He didn't look up immediately. Too much to do, he said. Fence lines are down. Cattle need feeding. Snow's coming again. She set the tray beside him. You need to eat, she said. Your children need you strong. He exhaled slowly, shoulders relaxing just a fraction. You think I'm strong? He asked quietly. Yes. He lifted his eyes. They held hers like a question he was afraid to ask. Alara, he said, voice low, you've changed this house in ways I can't explain. She felt her heart stumble. The barn went quiet except for the soft sounds of horses shifting in their stalls. You were right this morning, Caleb said. You're not alone here. Alara swallowed. Neither are you. Something passed between them. Warm, fragile, dangerous. The kind of thing that could change everything. Suddenly a sharp clang exploded behind them. A loose metal bucket kicked over by a horse. Caleb moved first, stepping instinctively in front of Alara, shielding her with his body. The moment passed quickly, but the gesture lingered. Alara, he said, voice unsteady, go on inside. I'll finish up here. She hesitated, then nodded. Good night, Caleb. He didn't answer right away. He watched her walk toward the house, lantern light catching the snow in her hair. and she could feel his gaze on her long after she stepped through the door. Upstairs, Maisie slept soundly. Colton breathed easier. Lydia lay awake, eyes open in the dark. "Alara," Lydia whispered. "Yes, sweetheart. Are you scared of staying here?" Alara sat on the edge of the bed. "A little." "Why?" She smiled softly. "Because caring for people always makes us a little afraid. Afraid of losing them. Afraid of failing them. Afraid they won't want us back." Lydia was quiet. Then, in a voice barely audible, "Do you want us to want you?" Alara's throat tightened. "Yes, very much." Lydia's small hand slipped into hers. "You're doing good," she whispered. Alara blinked hard against the sudden burn in her eyes. "Thank you," she murmured. "That means more than you know." Lydia squeezed her hand, and for the first time, truly accepted her. Snow began to fall hours later, thick and heavy, blanketing the ranch in a silent white hush. Alara stood at her window, watching it drift down like feathers from the sky. Behind her, the house breathed quietly. Safe, warm, real. But far off in the dark, somewhere along the ridge, a lone horse moved. A shadow, a threat. Dane Mercer was not finished, and winter had only just begun. The snowstorm hit harder than anyone expected. By morning, the world outside the ranch house had vanished under a thick white curtain. Wind roared across the plains like a living thing, slamming against the windows, rattling the roof, howling through every crack in the wood. Inside, the house glowed warm with firelight, but the walls trembled with every gust. Maisie pressed her hands against the frosted window pane. "It looks like the sky is falling." Alara wrapped a shawl around the little girl's shoulders. "That's what heavy snowstorms do. They make everything disappear for a while. Even people?" Maisie asked softly. Alara knelt beside her. "Not the people who stay close." Maisie leaned into her side, comforted. In the corner of the room, Lydia stacked kindling with brisk, practiced movements, trying, as always, to carry a weight too heavy for her young shoulders. Colton sat by the fire under blankets, breathing easier than yesterday, but still weak. Caleb stormed through the front door, stamping snow from his boots. His coat was covered in white, his hat soaked. "The north fence is down," he said grimly. "Cattle are panicking. I need to ride out before they scatter." "You can't go out in that storm," Alara said before she could stop herself. Caleb looked up, surprised by the urgency in her voice. "If the herd breaks," he said, "we lose them. And if we lose them, we don't survive until spring." Alara felt the truth settle like a stone in her stomach. Lydia stepped forward, fear flickering in her eyes. "Pa, it's too dangerous." Caleb ran a hand through his wet hair. "I don't have a choice." "I'm coming with you," Lydia said. "No," Caleb snapped. "But I said no." Lydia flinched, biting back tears. Caleb's frustration was directed at the storm, at Dane Mercer, at the fragile state of the ranch, but it hit Lydia all the same. Alara stepped closer. "I'll watch the children," she said softly. "I'll keep the fire strong. They'll be safe." Caleb's jaw worked. He didn't want to leave them, but he had to. Finally, he nodded once. "Thank you." He pulled on his gloves, buttoned his coat, and turned to go. Then he paused. "Alara," he said quietly, "lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me." A shiver ran through her. "Do you think Dane Mercer—" "I think he wants what he wants," Caleb said. "And storms make folks bold." The wind howled outside. Caleb hesitated a heartbeat longer, looking at Alara as if he wanted to say something more, something he wasn't ready to name. Then he was gone. The hours crawled. Alara kept the children close, the fire hot. Lydia helped her carry logs, her movements tense and restless. Maisie clung to Alara's skirt, scared of the thunderous wind. Colton dozed beside the hearth, his breath shallow but steady. When the storm reached its height, the house shook violently. Snow piled against the windows, so thickly the world outside turned into a white wall. Maisie whimpered. "What if Pa gets lost?" "He won't," Alara whispered, stroking her hair. "Your father knows this land better than any man alive." Lydia sat at the table, fists clenched. "Dane Mercer knows this land too." Alara froze. "You think he'd come here in a storm?" Lydia swallowed. Pa said, "Storms make people bold." Alara's pulse quickened. She checked the door. The latch was down. The bolt secure. She went to the window, but all she saw was snow. Hours passed. The storm didn't break. The wind continued to scream. Caleb didn't return. A knot of fear settled deep in Alara's gut. She lit every lantern in the house, one by the door, one by the stairs, one near the kitchen. Warmth and light. Enough to keep fear at bay. Enough to reassure the children. But not herself. By nightfall, the storm eased just enough for the world to take shape again. Shadows emerged across the plains. Trees, fences, drifting snow. And two figures. One walking. One being dragged. Alara's breath caught. "Lydia," she whispered. "Get your coat." Lydia ran to her side. Maisie peeked over the edge of the window. Colton struggled to sit upright. "It's Pa," Lydia cried, voice cracking. "And someone's with him," Alara said, heart racing. "Get blankets. Hurry." They rushed outside, just as Caleb stumbled toward the house, half carrying, half dragging a man whose clothes were soaked with blood. Caleb nearly fell when he reached the porch. "Alara," he rasped. "Help me, he's hurt bad." Alara grabbed the wounded man's other arm, and together she and Caleb pulled him inside, lowering him onto the floor near the fire. Maisie screamed. Colton coughed violently. Lydia covered her mouth in horror. Alara froze for one heartbeat, just one, before instinct took over. "Blankets. Towels. Lydia, boil water." Colton moved closer to the fire. "Maisie, get my bag." The children scrambled into motion. Alara knelt beside the stranger. His face was swollen. Snow clung to his eyelashes. His lips were blue. His shirt was torn across the chest, revealing a wound that had bled and bled until the cold slowed it. Caleb sat against the wall, breathing hard, one hand pressed to his ribs. "You're hurt," Alara said sharply. "Forget me," Caleb rasped. He was on the ridge. "Shot. Trying to crawl home." "Home?" Alara's stomach dropped. "Someone tried to kill him." Caleb nodded, jaw clenched. "And if I hadn't come along, he'd be dead in the snow." Alara pulled the stranger's coat aside. Then she froze. The man was young, no more than 26, barely a man. "How long was he lying out there?" she asked. "A while," Caleb answered. "Found him when I was fixing the fence." Tracks in the snow looked fresh. One rider, one shooter. Alara pressed cloth against the wound, her hand steady even though her heart wasn't. Caleb watched her. "You're good at this," he whispered. "My husband," she swallowed hard. "He worked in the infirmary before he died. I helped him often." Caleb's expression softened. "You're saving this boy," he said. Alara didn't look up. "No, we are. You found him." Lydia ran in with boiling water. Maisie followed with her bag of herbs and tools. Colton, pale but determined, moved closer with an extra blanket. Alara cleaned the wound, stitched it with careful, practiced hands, and wrapped his chest tightly. It was nearly an hour before she finally sat back, exhausted. "He'll live," she said, "but he'll need days to recover." Caleb let out a shaky breath. Then Lydia pointed at the wounded boy, eyes wide. "That's Owen Mercer." Alara's head snapped up. "Owen what?" "Dane Mercer's nephew," Lydia whispered. "He's the quiet one, the one who never looked like he wanted to be part of Dane's business." Caleb's shoulders stiffened. Maisie trembled. "Will Dane come for him?" Alara felt the fear ripple through the room. Caleb stood slowly, gripping his side. "Yes," he said, voice low. "He will." Alara swallowed hard. "And when he does, he'll find Owen alive." "And a witness," Caleb answered. A long silence followed. Then Caleb turned to Alara. "We need to prepare," he said. "Mercer won't let this go." Alara met his eyes. For the first time since she'd stepped off that stagecoach, they were standing together, not as strangers, not as a man and a governess, but as two people fighting for the same home. Snow still clung to the windows when morning came, but the world outside was different. Quiet, heavy, waiting. Inside the house, the fire burned hot. Owen Mercer lay on a pallet near the hearth, pale but breathing steadily. Alara checked his bandages again as Colton slept nearby, still recovering but stronger each day. Caleb stood by the door, fastening his coat with one hand, the other braced against his injured ribs. He winced with every movement, but tried to hide it. Alara noticed anyway. "You shouldn't be up," she said gently. Caleb didn't even pretend to disagree this time. "I know," he said, "but we can't pretend Owen wandered here by accident." Lydia paused mid-step at the table where she was mixing oatmeal. Fear flickered across her face, followed by something sharper. Anger. "Dane Mercer shot his own nephew," she whispered. Alara glanced at the wounded young man. His lashes fluttered, but he didn't wake. "We don't know that for certain." Caleb's jaw tightened. "I rode the ridge after I brought Owen in." Someone doubled back. One set of tracks going toward Mercerland. Alara felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. Why would Dane hurt his own blood? Caleb answered without hesitation. Because Dane only cares about what belongs to him. And if Owen tried to leave, or tried to speak out, Dane might see him as a threat. Maisie, still in her nightgown, hugged Alara's arm. "Is he going to come for us?" Alara looked into the child's eyes and saw the tremble she was trying so hard to hide. "No matter what happens," Alara whispered, "I won't let anything happen to you." Maisie clung tighter. Caleb watched them, something shifting in his gaze, something protective. By the time darkness fell, the house felt less like a home and more like a fortress. But fear still seeped through the cracks. At supper, Alara sat beside Caleb, close enough to feel the warmth of his arm against hers. Outside, wind whispered through the trees, a soft shift of snow, the creak of ice. Caleb leaned toward her. "Thank you," he murmured. "For what?" "For not falling apart. For staying strong when the children look to you. His voice dipped. "When I need you to be." Alara swallowed. "I'm not strong," she whispered. "You are," he said. "Stronger than any woman I've ever known." Their eyes met. Silence stretched, gentle, warm, full of something neither dared say aloud. Then a noise. A crunch of snow outside. Soft, deliberate. Lydia froze mid-bite. Colton sat upright. Maisie reached for Alara's hand. Caleb stood. He grabbed his rifle, motioned for Lydia to take the children, and stepped toward the door with slow, careful movements. Alara followed, heart pounding, keeping Maisie close behind her. Caleb pressed a finger to his lips, then eased the curtain aside. Blackness. Only darkness. Nothing. Then a shape moved. A man. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Walking toward the porch. Alara's breath hitched. Lydia whispered, "Pa." But the figure didn't move like Caleb. He moved like someone with confidence. With arrogance. With a purpose that chilled the air around him. Then he stepped into the lantern light. Dane Mercer. Caleb lowered the curtain slowly. Maisie clung harder to Alara's skirt. "He's alone," Caleb whispered, "which means his men are out there in the dark." Alara's heart hammered. A soft knock echoed through the house. Polite. Cold. Certain. Caleb lifted his rifle and whispered, "Stay behind me." The second knock was louder. "Alara Dawson," Dane Mercer called, his voice smooth as poison sliding in a glass. Alara's blood ran cold. He knew her name. This wasn't a visit. It was a message. "Caleb Hale," Dane continued. "Open the door before things get unpleasant." Maisie whimpered. Lydia covered her mouth. Even a fire seemed to hold its breath. Caleb stepped closer to the door. "Alara," he whispered, "stay back." But Alara's voice came steady, quiet, unshaken. "No, I stand with you." Caleb looked at her then, really looked at her, his gaze full of something fierce and bright. Before he could answer, Dane Mercer spoke again. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." Caleb's grip tightened on the rifle. "You mean someone," he growled. A pause. Then Dane's voice, cold as winter wind. "Bring me the boy." Alara felt the world narrow to a single point. A single choice. Protect Owen. Or condemn him. Caleb didn't hesitate. "You're not getting him," he called. Dane chuckled. "Oh, Caleb," he said. "That's where you're wrong." A shadow shifted outside. Then another. And another. Caleb whispered, "Get the children back into the pantry. Now." Alara didn't argue. She grabbed Maisie's hand, ushered Lydia and Colton behind her, and reached for the lantern. But before she could take a single step, the third knock came, hard, heavy, full of promise. And Dame Mercer said the words that froze her heart. "Open this door, or I'll break it down." Dame Mercer's third knock shook the door so hard the lantern above the mantel rattled against the wall. Snow drifted from the rafters in a quiet cloud, like the house itself was bracing for what waited outside. Caleb stood tall, rifle raised, every muscle locked into a line of defiance. Alara felt Maisie trembling against her skirt. Lydia pressed her back against the pantry door, protecting Colton behind her like a mother wolf shielding her young. Alara's heart thudded painfully. Outside, Dane's boots crunched in the snow as he shifted his weight. "Last chance, Caleb," he called, voice too calm. "Hand over the boy, or this turns ugly." Alara moved to Caleb's side before she even realized she'd taken a step. "You don't have to do this alone," she whispered. Caleb didn't look away from the door, but his voice, rough as winter bark, warmed with something deeper. "I know," he said. He knew. He finally knew she stood with him. A silence fell. Not peace. A silence before lightning strikes. Then a blow. Another. The door shuddered beneath each hit. Wood groaned like it was about to split. Maisie cried out, and Alara swept her into her arms, whispering into her hair. "You're safe. I promise. You're safe." Caleb positioned himself in front of the door, jaw hard, eyes narrowed with the kind of resolve that came from a lifetime of protecting those he loved. "Alara," he murmured, "get them back." "I'm not leaving your side," she whispered. He turned just enough to look at her, really look at her. And in that moment, fear and anger and grief swirled together into something else entirely. "If they come through that door," he said, voice low, "I need you alive. I need them alive." Alara felt her breath catch. "You need me?" Caleb didn't blink. "Yes." A heavy slam shook the hinges. Dane wasn't alone. Two men flanked him now, their shadows flickering across the frosted window. Caleb's voice sharpened. "Go. Take the children." Alara swallowed the fear clawing at her chest. She pressed a soft kiss to Maisie's forehead, squeezed Lydia's hand, brushed Colton's cheek with trembling fingers. "I'll come back," she promised. Then she moved them toward the pantry, shoving crates to the side, clearing space, pulling blankets from shelves. Lydia helped her, face pale but determined. A crash split the air. The door buckled. Alara froze. Caleb shouted, "Now, Alara!" She shoved the pantry door, closed, just as the front door exploded inward. Wind, snow, splintered wood, an avalanche of cold and danger. Dane Mercer entered first, stepping over the shattered planks like a king surveying his land. His eyes swept the room and locked on Caleb, who stood firm, rifle raised. Behind Dane, two hired guns fanned out, guns drawn. "Caleb," Dane said softly, "you disappoint me." Caleb didn't waver. "You shot your own nephew. You think I'd hand him back over?" Dane's smile twisted. "I think you don't understand the situation you're in." Caleb cocked the rifle. "Understand perfectly." Dane's eyes slid across the room. "Searching, hunting, expecting. Where's she?" he asked suddenly. Caleb stiffened. "She?" he repeated. "Yes," Dane said with an amused sneer. "The Boston girl. The barren one. The one you threw out like a broken wheel." Caleb's face darkened. "Don't talk about her." Dane laughed. So she's still here." Caleb raised a rifle higher. Dane's men stepped forward. Everything froze. Alara pressed her ear against the pantry door, breath caught in her throat. She could hear boots scraping the floor, could hear Lydia whispering to Colton, "Don't cough. Please don't cough." Then, a voice behind her. Weak, shaking, desperate. Alara, Owen. He'd push himself up on trembling elbows, sweating and pale. He struggled to his feet, clutching the wall. "You can't die because of me," he whispered. Alara grabbed his arm. "You can't go out there." He shook his head. "He'll kill your whole family to get to me. I can't let him. We're your family too now," Alara whispered fiercely. Owen's breath trembled. "I'm just one life." "Not to us," she said. But Owen stepped toward the pantry door, just as Dane's voice boomed through the house again. "Bring him out, Caleb. or I will start taking pieces of your ranch. Then your children, one by one. Alara's blood froze. That was it. The line she wouldn't let him cross. No, she whispered. No more running. She shoved the pantry door open. Caleb's head whipped around. Alara. But she was already moving, standing between Dane's gun and Caleb's chest, eyes blazing, voice steady as iron. Leave, Alara said. Now. Dane blinked. Then he laughed. A woman, he sneered. This is who stands between me and what's mine? You shot your nephew, Alara said. He told us. He's alive, and he will testify. Owen stumbled out of the pantry behind her. Dane froze. For the first time, true fear flickered in his eyes. That's right, Owen rasped. I'll tell them everything, Uncle. Dane's face twisted. You ungrateful little. He raised his gun. Caleb fired. The sound cracked through the house, like the sky splitting open. Dane staggered back, his gun falling from numb fingers. Caleb turned the rifle on Dane's men, who instantly dropped their weapons and raised their hands. Get out, Caleb growled. Take your boss and leave. If you ever come back here, you won't walk away next time. The men didn't argue. They grabbed Dane, dragging him out into the snow. His boots scraped the floor, leaving a smear across the threshold. Caleb kicked the broken door shut behind them. Silence. Real silence. Then the children burst from the pantry, Maisie flinging herself at Alara, Lydia sobbing openly into Caleb's shirt, Colton coughing but smiling weakly. Alara sank to her knees. Maisie clung to her neck. You're safe, she whispered. We're all safe. Caleb dropped beside them, breathing hard, as though the weight of the last hour had finally crashed down. Alara, he said softly. She looked up. His voice shook. You saved us. No, she said. We saved each other. Their eyes held, and all the fear, all the distance, all the walls between them finally broke. Caleb reached for her hand, not as a father needing a governess, not as a man afraid to love again, but as someone who had finally found what he didn't know he'd lost. Alara, he whispered, stay. Not until spring. Not as a teacher. As family. As something more. Maisie tugged Alara's sleeve. Please stay. Lydia wiped her eyes. We need you. Colton took her other hand. We want you. Alara's heart swelled until it felt too big for her chest. She looked at Caleb. His eyes, storm-worn, grief-carved, hopeful, held hers with a tenderness she had never known. Yes, she whispered, voice breaking. Yes, I'll stay. Caleb pulled her into his arms, the children wrapping around them like a single heartbeat. Outside, snow continued to fall, but inside warmth, safety, family, love, steady as fire, and the home she'd thought she would never have again. If you felt this tale in your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Wild West Emotional Tales, where every story rides through the dust, the danger, and the kind of love that never dies. See you in the next tale, partner.